friends. Welcome to the Connected Mom podcast. I am Becky Harling, your host. And, I remember a season, the season really where I sent my first born off to college. She was a girl. And I got to say, it was really rugged. I don't feel like anybody really prepares you for letting go. I mean, we know we have to do that as parents, right? And we know that our kids are on loan to us. But when push comes to shove and you're actually leaving them in the dorm, or you're sending them on a missions trip, or you're letting go in some other way, it can be a little rough. It can be rough on them, and it can be rough on you as a mom. And we are in a series about letting go well. And today I have with me a good friend of mine, Michelle Neitert. She is a counselor. She has written a whole bunch of books. We'll have that all in the show notes. And, she recently sent her daughter off to college. And, then in the midst of that, she's dealing with aging parents. So she's in what we call that sandwich generation. And that just has a lot of challenges for us. But today we're going to be talking to Michelle about all of that, but also about a book that she wrote with Lynn Cowell, and it's called Strong and Secure. And as we send our kids out into the world, whether we send them to jobs, onto universities, onto the mission field, or wherever we send them, if there's anything we want for our kids, it's that they be strong and mature and secure. So we're going to talk about that today with Michelle. Michelle, welcome. It is great to have you back on.
Well, thanks for having me return. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about this conversation. I think as I look at the Facebook groups of parents who are struggling with how their kids are doing, worried about coming home for holidays, seeing grade reports, all of those things, I think that a lot of us just don't realize how hard it is to let go if they leave our home, or even harder sometimes if they're still in our home.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. So you and Lynn wrote this book. It's a devotional, which I love, called Strong and Secure. Tell us, what age young woman are you writing this for?
We really wrote this to 15 to 22-year-olds, and we had a real purpose in mind. This is actually the content that bonded, even though Lynn and I have produced some other materials like Loved and Cherished for younger girls, and then Managing Your Emojis for that kind of middle school age. What really bonded us together is both of us had read a book in college, and we were kind of not far apart at the time, even though she's from North Carolina and I'm originally from Iowa, North Carolina, and I'm from the Texas area. On the Father Heart of God by Floyd McClung, and learning about God.
I've read that book too. It's a great one. Yes.
Great book, really kind of trending in the 90s. So we're kind of dating ourselves a little bit there, but that's why we wanted to put this. This is really kind of a gift book to give to a young adult woman. Although my aunt, who's 77, this is her favorite book that I've written by far, she said. So she, and her friends have really loved this, because I think we all connect to those years of, and some of us are doing it now, when we're trying to figure out exactly who we are in light of who God is. And as we're dealing with our aging parents, I know my dad died 2 years ago. Those issues, the father issues, come back up again as we care for our parents as caregivers, things that are not resolved. And so I think knowing the Father Heart of God, understanding his heart for us, I mean, we don't outgrow that need for that. But for me, it was so important. I knew I wasn't going to college with my daughter, and she's 4 hours away in another state, but I knew the father would go with her.
And yeah. So, okay, I want to stop you there for a second, because I didn't say that yet, that the book really is targeted on these young girls knowing the Father Heart of God. And that is so important, because you're right. We go through this season, where we're going to college or whatever, and we're trying to grow up, and we're trying to decide, do we want to grow up? Who are we? Who are we in context to other people? Who are we in our relationship with God the Father? But then you said something interesting, that we go through that season again, maybe when we're letting go of our kids. Talk to us about that a little bit.
For me, and I share a little bit of this in the book, and my dad gave me permission in the last probably decade to really be comfortable with this. I think as kids, my sister and I both write and speak nationally. We're a little protective. My dad was a man who loved God and an elder in the church, and actually retired as the head of pastoral development for Mission Aviation Fellowship. So very public ministry career. But at the same time, he had a horrible temper and said things he did not mean, and did some things that he wished he could take back in our younger years in the home. And so experiencing both a lot of verbal abuse as well as some physical abuse by him really impacted my sense of self and even my view of men, which, I'm a professional counselor. I work with women all the time who are still working through their daddy issues, so to speak, as we like to say in the South. That was something that was really important to me to address in college. So another reason I wrote this book is for this age group is these are the years I worked through those things, learning to acknowledge what had occurred, how it had impacted me, and also getting to a place where I really forgave him for a lot of it. And what broke me, it's funny because now we're friends. Gary Smalley was the associate pastor in the area I was in. I went to Baylor and Waco. And he and John Trent were like literally selling this book called The Blessing out of the back of their trunks.
Yeah, I remember that book.
A national book. And
yes.
What my dad and I started reading that book at the same time. And what really broke me is my dad called me one night just beyond himself, because he couldn't go back and undo what he'd done. And didn't receive the blessing, didn't do a great job of passing it on. But I felt so humbled that I was reading this before I ever had children. Before, I was 20, he was 45. I had the opportunity to leave a different legacy and even pass the blessing back the other way up towards him and my mom. He would tell you that there are four of us, and three of us are in full-time ministry in some aspect, or married to full-time ministry. We always joke,
which is remarkable in and of itself, because sometimes there's a reaction against that.
There was my brother, and I don't share a lot about this, definitely, still struggles. Like if he's a representation of a local church, my brother's not that interested, and a leader and a recognized person. So there's definitely been impact in our family from that. But for us, he said that, my children have taught me generosity. Like I didn't learn that. He didn't. I mean, I'm going through these really interesting experiences right now. I mean, I just went up and spent less than 24 hours, and we spent some money to get there on going to see my daughter perform in like her choir concert. She's a worship leadership major at a college in Tulsa. So
my daughter, okay, pause. My daughter majored in worship, I bet, at that same college.
Oh, really? I bet, because there's only one place to major in worship there. And so I don't know if you've ever been to any of their concerts. It was phenomenal. The talent that ORU has been blessed with is amazing. And
yes, she was part of ORU Singers. So it was, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, what a small world. So we didn't even know that. If your audience is like, this is not staged, we had no idea we had this in common. And, I was really hesitant about the school because the school was a little chaotic when I was at Baylor, but it is
really, so is my husband. He was so hesitant. Yes.
It has really changed as Hobby Lobby money has been invested there, and they've aligned with the Evangelical Association. It's a different place than it was when I was in college. And so, just a great experience with her, like taking her out to meals and getting to kind of spoil her like we get to do, with our son who's still living here. I have a 15-year-old as well. I will never forget the first time I went out to dinner in college with my dad. It was after church at lunch, and we were at Burger King, and he bought everybody's burger but mine because that was going to come out of my allowance for the month, and it wasn't very much. And so it really was awful at the time. And you think about it, but I think other people probably who are listening have had experiences, and we do struggle. One of the biggest questions, like I'm constantly being reached out to for advice right now, kids who are depressed and are struggling in college, their roommates are having sex in front of them. I mean, it's a different world if you're not at a college where the boys and girls can't be in each other's dorms, for a lot of these kids our kids are experiencing just a world that they may or may not have been prepared for. And as I'm talking with them about that, like, when do you give, like, my daughter has kind of, like, she had a lot of money saved from summer, and we told her that was hers to spend, and she's dwindling. And we've kind of told her, we will buy groceries at this point for you, but we're not enabling a Starbucks habit in any way. You know, my husband's like, do not give her cash. Do not give her cash. Like, I think he was
hard.
Yeah, prepping himself, prepping me for that, you know. There are important lessons in this time, and we want her, as we wrap this back around to this book, I want her to become dependent on the Father's provision. And if we over provide, that doesn't happen for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard, I mean, let's face it, that's hard as parents. I mean, I got to be honest. I didn't always do a good job at that. It was like when we were living in California and our two oldest would fly home to see us and then go back to college in upstate New York. I would always slip them a 20, you know, because I was always afraid they would, you know, run out of money or whatever. And they were clear across the country from us. And yet there is a point where you have to empower your kids to trust the provision of the Father. And that can be a journey for them, can it? And for us as parents.
It can. And I think I'm trusting his provision. And we kind of talk about this as a different P in the book. Even his protection, because I will just confess, the first first couple weeks, I just couldn't stay off Life 360 to save my life, you know, and I'm like, she's in the parking lot. She's almost to the dorm, you know, because I mean, at Baylor, the parking lots were pretty unsafe. We had a rapist running around Waco about the time I was a freshman. And so, you know, and I will confess to your audience, I'm a little bit of a crime junkie. Like, I love the sound of the Dateline voices, and that's not really good for a college age mom to listen to. And so, you know, I have had to trust God, the Father, to go before her and to protect her, not only in her safety of being out, you know, at times at night that I would prefer her probably not to be, but in innocent fun that college kids have in coffee shop studying, but also to protect her heart as she develops relationships, to protect her wisdom and her choices and just all of those things. So it has been just a real journey these past couple of months of, I think my relationship with the Father Heart of God has grown absolutely at least as much as hers, as I'm really trusting him to be that invisible daddy and parent for her, and guiding and leading her and trusting, you know, when I thought about Strong and Secure, the title, I thought about being strong in your faith and secure in Christ. And we laid the groundwork for that in college. But, you know, being a Christian counselor who coaches women across the country and does parent consults across the country, faith is fragile sometimes. And it gets really tested in these years. And so I pray lots of prayers of protection over her, that she would continue to hold on to the truth and the relationship she's cultivated, but also that it would grow. And the only way faith does grow sometimes is to go through trials and tribulations.
Yeah, and that's the really hard part. I mean, you talk about checking, you know, whatever the app is, 360 all the time. And I remember when one of our daughters went away to college, and I would call her and I would know she was out, you know, and I would call again to see if she was back in the dorm yet. And after a while, she just turned off her phone, you know, it's like, oh, Mom, I didn't get your phone calls, you know. And it was such a testing for me. I'm like, Lord, give her wisdom, protect her. You know, she'd be out driving at 2 a.m. And I'm like, what in the world could you be doing at 2 a.m? But there's a whole new knowing of the Father Heart of God for those of us that are mamas who are sending these kids to college or just letting go in general, you know, and then discovering the Father Heart of God as you're caring for aging parents. You and I talked before we jumped on live on this about how you're in this sandwich generation. Okay, talk to us about that, Michelle.
Well, I literally went from doing a Christian counseling training. I was up in your area. I was in Denver, and then was supposed to rest at a beautiful home that somebody had offered me in Colorado, near Colorado Springs, and
You
unfortunately,
should have
either got
stopped
I
in.
know,
I
I
live
know,
right
either
here.
got altitude sickness. I either got altitude sickness or I caught something from them. They were sick. It's Matthew Ward's wife, Deanne and Matthew, and so they had set that up for me, and so grateful to them. But came back from that to my mom having a major heart surgery, a mitral valve replacement, and then and I hate to say this. I mean, my sister and I are both Christian speakers and leaders, but we are not great Christian caregivers. Like, I love to counsel and listen to your heart, but if I have to take you to the bathroom for the second time in the middle of the night, I'm not as kind and loving and patient as I wish I was. And so we've also kind of learned like how many days we can do that well. And then we kind of need a break from that. And I'm very fortunate. You know, I work with families on this, and it's really hard if your parents have hurt you. My mom is kind of a saint who served us well a lot. She was busy and she wasn't fully present for any of us because we laugh. We always say she had 5 kids because my father demanded a lot of her. So she had 4 kids, and then my father was very demanding of her time and her attention. But she had a heart to serve. So it is easy to serve my mother. She has been around for our childbirths and helped us move and organize kitchens. But when you have a parent who has not been that kind of parent to you, who you have been on your own and maybe had to take care of yourself, and maybe they even took care of them a little bit, it's a lot harder. I know, as I work with people in the counseling office, discerning how do I love well in those situations, and what am I really called to do? And I was laughing even when we were in the hospital because the nurses were I'm sure those nurses in like the cardiac ICU, the stories they can tell, they're like mothers and daughters, you know, and they're laughing because I'm kind of hovering, you know, and my mom's like, I can do it myself, and I'm like, oh, it sounds like me when I was 3, you know, and so we're kind of yeah, we're laughing, but these are tough issues for a lot of families, because if you have unresolved trauma and pain that you haven't addressed, a lot of times it comes full in your face during these times. I'm so grateful my dad and I resolved those way before my dad 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago, he walked in my house at Thanksgiving, and I had just had a knee replacement, and I took one look at him, and I told my mother, something's really wrong with dad. He's really sick. Just being a mental health professional, being around, my husband's a healthcare consultant. We spend a lot of time around healthcare. I was like, he's too yellow. Something's really wrong. And he got a diagnosis in January of pancreatic cancer. We were just waiting on all the scans to come back, and he did not live very long. I laughed. God, my dad was a pretty strong leader, and I think God kind of took his order seriously, because he begged him not to leave him in pain for a long time, and he died. He had a stroke and died within about 3 months of his diagnosis. But I was so glad that I could, even as my dad went through some spiraling during that time. It's very common when as I work with people, we have some staff who are chaplains as well, and I work with people in the office. A lot of times when somebody gets sick, they're weak, and then they kind of get a manic high, and then they pass. And during that time, if you don't know that's coming and you don't know how to manage a person during that time, everything can flare up. And words that you regret, that you wish you hadn't said, or that you wanted to say, but it didn't feel right all of a sudden, you know, that was something that we experienced. My dad all of a sudden wanted to make sure he spent a lot of time converting our Christian materials into all different languages that went throughout Eastern Europe and Africa. And he was wanting to make sure all that was well preserved. So I'm like, Dad, you should be resting. And he's staying up, making sure I know where the terabyte drive is and, you know, how it works. And I'm like, you know, it's hard sometimes because I would have done it differently, and I will do it differently. Like, as much as I love ministry, my focus will be on the people in front of me and how important and significant they are to me, and not sowing a legacy of my stories and my books and my travels and those things, because that's not what they're going to remember. They're going to remember, how you interact with those people in those moments. And I have to remember that with my mom. We're praying right now. She does not have pneumonia. She's had this really bad cough since the surgery. And I don't know, at 77, my mother-in-law is 87. We don't know when that last interaction is. So we try to make those focused. We try to be present. We try to make them kind and patient and significant. And it's been harder with my mother-in-law who's experienced at times. If you put people on certain medications, they'll have some dementia aspects or even hallucinations. And, it's really easy to freak out in the midst of that. But what we're really called to be is the compassionate Jesus to them. And I do think that sense of the Father's healing, that's one of our sections in this book, can take place in those moments if we allow God to work in and through us.
So, okay. So really, when I think of letting go, you're letting go of your kids into more of an adult setting, and you're also letting go of your parents and whatever trauma happened there. So we're almost out of time, Michelle, but for other moms who are in that sandwich generation who are trying to let go well, they're trying to let go of their kids well, trying to let go of their parents well, could you give us just like 3 tips as you close? How do they do that? Because they want to honor Jesus, and letting go is just hard.
All right. They're not going to like the first one because I don't like it, but it's really necessary. And all of this letting go involves grief. It involves feeling sadness and pain. And I have allowed myself some time to sit and watch a little Netflix and be a little numb and read a devotional and just acknowledge that sometimes when all those waves hit, they're going to slow you down. And it's okay to be slower. So that's the first thing I would say to you. If you can, slow down if it's possible. I know for me, I've really been asking God, do I have one big, I'm 55. Do I have one big push left in me career wise? Or do I want to start kind of a pace of a little more maintenance and not so many big pushes right now? And I think when you're in the season of letting go with your kids and your parents at the same time, sometimes that's not the time to worry about doing something to a home or taking on new projects or something like that. Sometimes it's necessary because you're paying for college, and that's the hard part in the midst of this. But so the first thing I would say is grieve your losses and know that grief is a part of this, and don't be surprised by it and be okay with it. If the grief gets stuck, get some help, whether you need to talk through it with someone. So that might be my second thing is don't do this alone. Do it in community, whether it's a small group, whether you do need to reach out to a Christian coach or counselor who's walked through or is walking through a similar time to you and has some words of wisdom for you as well. Get some support. Definitely, I have wanted to connect with God more just to feel his love and support in the midst of this time, and know that I think a lot of us women during this time feel very unseen. I saw that today on a post. And I think that to remember we're not invisible to him, that the Father loves us and sees us and cares about what we're going through and has great compassion for us during these seasons of our lives. So that would be number 2. I think the third thing I would say is be aware it's going to affect your body. So take good care of it. I'm getting more sleep than I was probably 3 years ago. I'm not doing great because it's really cold in Texas today. But I'm taking more walks outside just to experience nature, things like that. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and I think I'll just say it in the way I spoke to a couple of 100 women last week, and I taught them how important breathing is to our minds and our hearts and our bodies. And they loved, even though this is the way I teach it to preschool teachers, they loved it. So I'll leave your audience with this. Ready? Smell the flower. Blow out the candles, and we have lots of them. And smell the flower and blow out the candle. And even that helps us with that letting go. Sometimes when my daughter's not where and I'm nervous about right now. I'm just going to be really transparent. She has not met with her advisor yet, and that should have happened weeks ago. And so I am. She is different than me. Although I'm becoming more like her.
It's okay. Let's smell the flowers.
That's right.
And
blow out
the candles.
And if the bank account looks lower than you think it should be, they'll figure it out. Smell the flower, blow out the candle. If pneumonia is coming and we have more caregiving to do, we're going to smell the flower and blow out the candles. So those would be my 3 tips I'd leave you with.
I love that, Michelle. Hey, I love having you. I love seeing your beautiful face, and so practical. And you moms out there, letting go begins when when they're toddlers, and it continues all the way through into college and adulthood. And then there's a different kind of letting go when you're letting go of your parents. And yet through it all, my prayer for you is that you can more deeply connect with the God the Father's loving heart for you, because he's the one that won't leave you or forsake you. So remember these great tips that Michelle's given you. And we just want to say, hey, you're going to make it. You're going to make it as you let go, because God is right there with you. So thanks for joining us today on The Connected Mom. And we hope you're going to join us next week, where we're going to have another conversation that will help you to connect more deeply with God, more empathetically with your fellow moms, and more intentionally with your child. Thanks for joining us today.